Hi, everybody. It's Peter Schiff, and it is Thursday, June 17th, 2010. Well, I watched President Obama's speech last night from the Oval Office about BP, and I've already spoken about my concerns with respect to the way we're handling this. But certainly, I can see the political risk rising substantially regarding investments in and doing business here in the United States, given the way the President and Congress is handling or mishandling the BP and this oil spill. You know, what's also very troubling to me about the Obama speech is that it seems to me that he is going to use this accident, this spill, as a catalyst and to use the anger about it and the environmental damage to push through energy and environmental legislation that might otherwise not have been passed. And that, I think, is going to do far more damage to our economy than the oil spill itself. You know, I think some of the congressmen who might have had the political courage to stand up for some of the cap and trade type legislation, given the public opinion now, they're not going to have the fortitude to resist. And I think we could also get some other kind of more comprehensive energy bill that is going to favor certain types of energy over others, certain types of alternative energy. And it is going to be, you know, a huge loss for the American economy, because nothing that what we're going to do is going to solve the problems of energy dependence or lessen our dependence on fossil fuels. It is simply going to make our economy less efficient and lead to a less efficient production of alternative energy sources when it's politicians who are deciding which forms of energy are going to be subsidized and which forms are going to be taxed. You know, also today I spent quite a bit of time watching the hearings where the chairman of BP is being grilled by Congress. And, you know, one of the things that really angers me when I see this is, you know, when you have these congressmen who are grilling him about, you know, asking him if he can understand how frustrated the shrimpers must be and how complicated the process is to file a claim to be reimbursed. And you know, I feel for the shrimpers too, but what galls me is that these congressmen, you know, are yelling at BP for how they are making the lives of the shrimpers more difficult. Well, what do they think they do every day of their lives? Do you think these shrimpers or the fishermen are happy to have to fill out tax returns every April 15th? You think they're happy about having to keep all these books and records and having to turn over so much of their income to the federal government? You think they're happy having to comply with all the rules and regulations that are put upon them by the federal government? Don't you think they're frustrated having to comply with those rules? I'm sure in the scheme of things, they're far more frustrated with Washington than with BP. Yes, BP is the villain today, but Washington has been and always will be the larger villain. And it's just so frustrating, the hypocrisy involved. To see these senators or the congressmen up there, I wish that I could get grilled in that seat and try to turn the tables and try to hold them accountable for the misery and the frustration and the economic damage that they've wrought. You know, talking about damage being done, you know, look at Freddie and Fannie, which finally were now delisted from the exchange, I think yesterday. And it's been revealed now that the losses in Freddie and Fannie have already hit, I think, 150 or 160 billion, and it's been less than a year. Now, the original forecasts were for that to be the losses over 10 years, and they've hit it in 10 months. Now the estimates are that the losses will be between 500 billion and $1 trillion. Now remember, initially I've always estimated that the true losses at Fannie and Freddie would be somewhere between 1 and 2 trillion. Now, number one, this shows you how ridiculous government estimates are, like, you know, how much the Obamacare is going to cost us. But if we want to talk about real damage to the American economy, you know, it's not necessarily BP, it's Fannie and Freddie. Yet these guys are totally off the hook. Their executives are off the hook. There's no investigation of Freddie and Fannie. In fact, they're not even part of the new financial regulation bill. And these were creatures that were created by government, that had government backing. They were insuring loans with government guarantees, Where's the outrage over Freddie and Fannie? Why aren't those executives up on the hot seat? Or what about the congressmen or the senators that were in their hip pockets that were preventing any legislation that would have reined them in? No, it is pure hypocrisy, pure and simple. And also, when you want to talk about fraud, you know, they're talking about, is there some negligence here? What about the negligence of Congress? What about the fraud committed by Congress? You know, I recently was looking at these estimates that Congress was putting out on the deficit, you know, because they're trying to show that our debt to GDP is manageable. And I think they have our debt to GDP getting to 100% of GDP by, I think, 2015. Now, during that period of time, though, the national debt grows from 13 trillion to 19 trillion. But they also have the economy growing from 14 trillion to 19 trillion. There's no way that's going to happen. If you look at the economic assumptions that they've made, they're assuming that our economy grows, I think, by over 5% a year for the next 5 years. Well, how's that going to happen? I mean, that's higher than the historical average rate of growth. How are we going to achieve that with all the headwinds of all this debt that we have? It's impossible. And at the same time, the government's assumptions on interest rates is that interest rates stay extremely low during the entire period of time. So during the next 5 years, so that our debt is only equal to 100% of our GDP, and it's about 90% now, they assume growth is much higher than average, yet interest rates remain much lower than average. These aren't assumptions. These are flat out lies. Where's the outrage there? You know, it's more likely that our debt to GDP 5 years from now will be more like 125 to 150% if we use realistic assumptions on growth and interest rates. And of course, that's just the funded debt or the on-budget funded debt. It doesn't include the debt of Fannie and Freddie, which I talked about earlier, which is about $6 trillion. Of course, it doesn't include all the unfunded liabilities of Social Security and Medicare. You know, where's the outrage there about this fraud? Now, also, we got some more economic data that came out today, weaker than expected jobless claims. Also, this week, we got weaker than expected housing data. Again, it's weaker than expected because people still think that the economy is recovering. It's not recovering at all. It simply looked like a recovery as we spent more borrowed money, but as the effect of the stimulus wears off and the hangover sets in, people will understand. Now, the gold market already understands this. You know, the price of gold today closed at another record high. It was up better than 15 bucks an ounce. Today, the dollar continued to slip. The Swiss franc was particularly strong today. The dollar index now, I think, is about, I don't know, 85 3/4. I think 85 level is going to be a key technical level to watch. You know, also, it's unfortunate. I was going to be on CNBC today to discuss or to argue or debate with Ron and Sana regarding the comments I mentioned 2 days ago on my video blog regarding Ron Paul and how foolish he was and how little he knows and what a simpleton Ron is for having invested so heavily in gold stocks. And as somebody who has invested heavily in gold stocks myself, I wanted to defend both Ron Paul and my investment strategy and our knowledge of economics that led us to adopt that strategy. It would have been nice to have had that debate today with Ron. Unfortunately, the length of the BP hearings caused them to postpone you know, that debate. So hopefully it will still be rescheduled for another day. So watch the website at europac.net. I try to make, you know, announce my appearances in advance. So be looking to the website for that appearance. Anyway, that's it for today, everybody. Take care.